Speaker tonight is Dennis Moriarty. Denny graduated from St. John's University in 1969, and then he attended William Mitchell College of Law, receiving his Juris Doctor in 1973. He was elected Scott County Attorney in 1974, and during his tenure there, he established himself as a trial lawyer representing Scott County in both state and federal courts. At the conclusion of his 4-year term with Scott County, Dennis returned to private practice, forming the firm of Jaspers, Moriarty, and Wetherille, PA. He and his wife, Benny, not his wife, Benny, his wife's Mary. He and his Benny wife, Mary, from the class in 1971, live in Belle Plaine, Minnesota. Everybody, please welcome me, Denny Moriarty, everybody.
Thank you. When I went to St. John's, the Lafayette had its own fire department, and I was instrumental in handling that. I'm here to talk about Families Moving Forward, which is a program sponsored by Beacon Interfaith Housing Cooperative. That's a group of 80 faith communities, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, all working together to address the issues of homelessness. Now, faith communities working together is different for me. I grew up in a small town, 2,000 people, where all the Catholics drove Chevrolets and all the Protestants drove Fords. We didn't have, with 2,000 people, we didn't have blacks or Jews or Muslims to blame for our lot in life, so we were stuck with blaming other Christians, but it seemed to work out for us okay. In any event, Families Moving Forward takes care of 50 families a year, 4 families at a time, going faith community to faith community. That amounts to about 17 people. And you'll find that of the 17, about 10 or 12 will be children. Now, I spent most of my life not seeing homeless people, so imagine my surprise when I learned that tonight, in the Twin City metropolitan area, there will be over 6,000 homeless people. Dr. Mary Beth Shin of Vanderbilt University did a study on homelessness in Minnesota, and she indicates to us that of those 6,000 people, 2,000 of them will be children, and half of those will be under the age of 5. Now, everybody has their own preconceived idea about what homeless people should be like, and oftentimes we're disappointed when they don't live up to our expectations. For example, homeless people should be polite, they should be appreciative, they should not smoke cigarettes, they should not have cell phones, and they should not carry large flat-screen TVs into the homeless shelter. And they definitely should not be obese. We recently hosted our 4 families during a community celebration in my town. And we had our 4 families, and a little girl celebrated her 7th birthday with us. She looked a little bit like Shirley Temple, except she was black and she had cornrows instead of curls. By the way, people of color are 2.5 times more likely to be homeless. Anyway, we took the families to the ballpark, and they went on the carnival rides, and they ate at the fireman's stand, and they saw the fireworks. And that night on the way home, this little girl walked up to me, and she took me by the hand, and she said, "This is the best birthday I've ever had." And I said, "Oh, I'm so glad you were with us, sweetheart." And she said, "Can we go to barbecue days tomorrow night?" And I said, "No, I'm sorry, but barbecue days is all over." And then she said, "I wish every day could be barbecue days." So you say, why is this going on in this beautiful state, this state of Minnesota? Why do we have this problem? Well, one of the reasons we have this problem is because there are 100,000 families that live in the Twin City metropolitan area that pay 50% or more of their income for housing. That's 100,000 families who are a broken down car or a sickness away from being homeless. Dr. Shin tells us that if you want to rent a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the Twin Cities, you need to earn $18.60 an hour. And if you're working minimum wage, then you need to be prepared to work 78 hours per week just to pay for just to pay for your residence. So you say, what's the federal government's interest in this? We do have Section 8 housing. Section 8 housing is a lottery system. Like most lottery systems, the people that don't participate have just about as much chance of winning as the people that do. Last year, 36,000 families applied for Section 8 housing in Minnesota. Of that 36,000, 29,000 lost the lottery immediately. The remaining 7,000 were placed on a wait list, anywhere from 1 to 7 years. The number of years actually depends on the number of children that you have. So you say to yourself, what's the market like? Well, medium price housing is prohibitive. I mean, that's out of the question. But what if you wanted to buy a $150,000 house? You got to have a down payment. You got to have 20%. You got to have $30,000. What if you just wanted to buy or make that first month's rent payment and the damage deposit? That's going to be like $2,500. Where are you going to get the money to do that? Most of the homeless people that I deal with don't have personal bankers. And as a result of that, you got to look for some place to find money, okay? Now, if it were you and I, we would probably have looked at our parents. But interestingly, in the Twin Cities, in spite of the fact that 75% of white people own their own home, only 23% of people of color own their own home. Now, if you don't own your own home, then you cannot borrow against it to put your child through college, or to help your daughter get married, or to help one of your children buy a house, or to come up with that damage deposit when it's necessary. Why this incredible disparity in home ownership? Well, it goes back to one of the reasons is in 1946 they passed the GI Bill. The GI Bill was the first time people could buy homes with zero down. Incredible. Regrettably, of the first 67,000 mortgages that were issued by the Veterans Administration, they weren't given, they were guaranteed by the VA, less than 100 went to people of color. In the next 30 years, less than 3% of the money that was guaranteed by the Veterans Administration went to people of color. And you say, why is that? Because of discrimination. Banks and mortgage companies would not loan money to people of color even when the federal government guaranteed payment. So, you got to stand back and you got to say to yourself, who in the hell's at fault? To paraphrase Julius Caesar, I would ask anyone here, does anyone believe that this country cannot provide affordable housing for its people? Last January, this Congress passed a tax cut. That tax cut gives a tax break to hedge fund managers, not hedge fund managers and plumbers, just hedge fund managers. That tax break cost the federal government $8 billion. If you happen to own a private airplane, lo and behold, you get a tax break too this past tax time. That tax break costs the federal government $50 million. And if you're one of those lucky people that happen to own a private golf course, then you too, like this little one down in South Florida, it's called Mar-a-Lago, you too get a tax break. That tax break costs the federal government $600 million. And we all know that there's adequate funds to build a wall that doesn't keep anything in and doesn't keep anything out. That wall will cost $24 billion. So you see, my friends, Cassius was right. The fault, dear Brutus, lies not in our stars, but in ourselves. It's we, the middle class, that are responsible for homelessness in this country. It's not the rich, because there's not enough of them. In the last election, 60 million people voted for an agenda that ignores what the Gospel of Matthew refers to as the least of our brethren. We recently hosted our families at Christmas time at the Presbyterian Church. And the Presbyterian Church is tiny. It was built in 1865, and we were down in the basement. It's beautiful, but we had to hang bed sheets from the ceilings, and we divided up the living spaces. They're about as big as this stage. And on the second day of hosting, we got a call from Families Moving Forward saying, can you take a fifth family? And I'm holding the phone and I'm saying, I don't know. And while I was there and while I was talking on that phone, one of the young moms came up to me and she said, If you need room for another family, I'll give them half of my space. Homelessness in this country is an embarrassment. It's a scourge on people of faith. The next time you hear someone talking about this country's dedication to equality, I want you to say or gently remind them that we always haven't been very good at that. And that as a result, there are certain people in our country that need special help, kind of like the little guy in the end. If the little guy in the end, like the homeless, if they don't get special help, then they will never see the game. If you or your faith community or your organization would like to hear more about Beacon Interfaith Housing Collaborative or Families Moving Forward, please give me a call. Thank you very much.